What a timely cat.
Hey,
Right on schedule. Look at that punctuality.
not bad. Air Force upbringing.
Well, I guess that would make sense with that for all of you guys. Is Dewey that prompt too?
They say, when not that we have any turnover, the guys that have been with us for years. When they first start, they go, "Oh, I see. Being 5 minutes early is really being 10 minutes late." The band is one. We're all down there at 12:30.
I love it, man. Well, huge aloha, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Good to
Awesome.
see you.
Good to see you, man. And where am I? And what city are we catching you in today?
I'm at our Venice, California home,
Nice, dig it.
and I'm on a plane tomorrow to Oklahoma. I'm working through the summer, and then I'm back to Sydney at the end of August.
Right on. Very, very cool. All right. Well, first and foremost, Brother Gerry, a huge aloha, mahalo, welcome back. A very special place, I know, for you, Hawaii, and it's special to have you back on the show. So we appreciate it.
My pleasure. Always great to talk with you guys.
And you have this Aurora. Now, you've been in a lot of material coming through your mind. And before we get into the record, because the last several years he's been on with different ways of expressing himself with solo music outside of America, all tasty too. But last time you were on, just to bring us up to speed, you were still in Sydney, where your wife and I guess your step kids are from, and Dewey was at his place in Wisconsin or wherever it is. So take us up to speed with a little story, because you're a big public radio fan, so you know how important storytelling is. So tell us a little story of from when you left Australia and highlights of your life up till now and the return to the road with America.
Well, the 14, I was there for 14 months because of COVID, but the actual, as Dewey reminds us, the break was really 17 months because we all kind of sat at home for the first month or so. Nobody really knew what we were up against. And so I was there for a long time, longer than I've ever really been anywhere for a stretch. But as you know, got a lot of writing and recording done. And then we were in the middle of the 50th year tour when COVID hit. So that was 100 shows that we were maybe halfway through, and all of that stuff had been booked. Frankly, had been paid for and stuff. And so none of it got canceled. It just got moved 2 or 3 times, unfortunately. So for last year, a lot of it was just making up all that stuff that we had committed to doing before. And so this year, we're going to go through August and then put it down for a while and then start up next year in January. So we're back to a pretty predictable schedule, but we're all still wrestling with the challenges that we have. We got weekly news of certain bands. We know all the bands, that have to cancel this or cancel that. And so we've been fortunate. We did have to cancel a couple of weekends from different members in our band. We don't have subs, so it's not like, okay, we need the sub drummer or something. If one goes down, the team goes down. So been going well. Summer has always been our busiest time, and I'm actually here just today, and I'm off to Oklahoma tomorrow. Pick it up again.
And the first gig back, when exactly was it? Do you remember it? Was it scary at all?
We did a private for a guy up in Montana, and we hadn't done anything in a year and a half and stuff. And I remember because the particular guy who had booked this, his ranch is next to Huey Lewis. And so we had Huey over for the day hanging out. And he introduced us and stuff. So that was August of 21, I guess.
With Huey Lewis hanging out there with you.
Yeah, but he didn't get up and play.
Okay.
But anyway, that's how I remember that show. And then we worked through up till December. And then I went back to Sydney for December, January, and then came back. And we've been busy since February, doing mostly stuff in the States.
And the new album has a lot of powerful vocals, too. I was taking a listen to some of the ways that this thing and reading a little bit about the material that kind of comes with it, the promotional material. And it says, and it really is true, it's reminiscent of what is referred to as the Triple Killer Bees. So explain to folks who the Triple Killer Bees are and how that factors into the way you approach this stuff.
Well, I think that the only difference in this story from what I've been saying for decades is that we always said the Beatles and the Beach Boys are the main influences. And therein lies the kind of mid-Atlantic. It ain't just the British invasion, and it isn't just California, and it's all in between. But I threw the Bee Gees in there. That's the third B because Dewey too. We were always huge fans, but the Gibbs, all of them, just fantastic songwriters and stuff. And there's a few songs on this album that are a little bit more of a nod. there was a brief time when our manager Jim was handling Barry and Robin. It was after Morris had passed, and I thought, oh, this would be great, you know. And so I reached out to Barry, but by that time he had produced everybody, you know, Streisand and Kenny and everybody, and was basically taking it easy. So I think I waited a few years too late, because I would have loved to have worked with him.
So you never got any of those three, because you've worked with some interesting cats, had run-ins, of course, with the Chicago Dudes and Beach Boy cats, but nothing with the Gibbs, huh?
Well, I remember we did Top of the Pops with Bee Gees, if you want to go that far back.
Yeah, what's the memory of that?
Yeah, I remember it was when Horse was a single, so it would have been, you know, late in 71 in the UK. And I think their song might have been Words or World. You know, they had a series of those kind of Barry ballads.
Yeah.
And I can't remember which one, but remember on Top of the Pops, they like to run everything live. They don't like to stop the show. It's like, okay, it's going to be 36 minutes start to finish. But when the Bee Gees run, everything had to stop, and they all kind of come out and get that. Got some clout, those dudes.
That's funny. And it's great how you reference this stuff on the album too, because I mean there was this really psychedelic kind of one tune that, I don't know, evoked them to me, the Way to Go song on there. Yeah. I was wondering who's that electric psychedelic tone? Is that you playing? Because you played a lot of instruments.
And I tell you, there's a story to that. For all of the years that we worked at the record plant a lot in LA. We did Homecoming at the Record Plant Studio A, and we did Hat Trick in Studio A. But the entire time in Studio B was Stevie Wonder with Bob Margouleff and Malcolm Cecil producing. And this was just the pinnacle of recording at that time. It was after Intervisions, Talking Book Intervisions, music first finale. The chronology escapes me. But they were so hot as producers, Bob Margouleff and Malcolm Cecil, that they were doing other acts. And one of them was the Isley Brothers. And I remember going in and listening to Who's That Lady, which had this incredible guitar, phased guitar, really pinched fuzz tone thing. Yeah. They were telling me that it was actually, the guitarist on that record is, I think, one of the sons of the original Isley Brothers. I might have that wrong. But they cut that direct, you know, and it was we were always picking everybody's brain. How'd you record that and stuff? And so that's that guitar sound. I'm trying to get that sound from the Isley Brothers.
Well, and it reminded me of, it's funny you say that, because I kept hearing like that Spinners tune, I'll Be Around, like the vibe of that.
That's actually far more the homage. The guitar sound is direct ripped from the Isleys, but that particular Spinners song, the whole Philly thing, I love. Still do all the Philly sound and Tom Bell and all of those things. But the pinnacle of that to me is I'll Be Around.
Oh, wow.
And I love that song. And we actually played one time with the Spinners. And so the guitarist in the Spinners band, I cornered him backstage. I said, God, I said, can I video this? You know, dun, 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 you know, the guitar thing. And he plays it for me. But two things. One is he's left-handed. And so everything, looking at it, and it was all backwards, and I couldn't figure out. And the other thing was, it was so noisy that the mic and the auto level thing in the phone just completely squashed it, because there was so much noise in the gig that you can't hear a thing. You can just see him playing it, you know. But that was my chance.
Well, you get the memory too and the experience. So that's I was right on the money then when I was listening to that. I was like, wow, I hear that song. And then the harmonica, I was sitting there listening. How long have you I Fall Down? That's another one of these from Gerry Beckley of America, Aurora, his new record, and catchy one with that. Is that you on the harmonica? Or?
Yeah. In fact, I Fall Down, I think, is all me. I mean, I drum, I play a lot of instruments, and I think that one in particular is all me. Yeah, it's interesting when you, like, there's one moment in the live show where I play harmonica, and it's on Lonely People. There's a harmonica solo. Yeah. And you can just see people go, oh, look, he's playing. It's like, not that it's, I don't want to diminish, because there are some incredible and talented people, Larry Adler and stuff, that just made it, the maestros of the harmonica. But the kind of thing I do, or Dylan, or John Lennon, is just you're blowing and sucking. It's not rocket science.
Yeah, but it sounds good. I mean, you listen to the Wizard by Black Sabbath. It isn't a whole bunch of complicated things, but it's pretty important how it all lays out. You know what I mean? Different.
Hey, George Martin produced an album by Larry Adler, and I should look that up. His is a fascinating story. I think he got run out of Hollywood in the the communist purge or something. It's a strange story, but he was an incredible harmonica player. Fantastic.
That's cool how you acknowledge some of these cats too, in the way that they have influenced you. Now, the one we haven't mentioned in our little wrap today of the three Bs is any Beatles experiences over your life that have sort of you had run-ins with those cats that stick out that are exciting to remember.
Many run-ins, and knew George quite well. Got to know George to where Dew and I would go up and hang at the house and stuff. But the first time I met George Harrison was through Derek Taylor. Derek Taylor was the Beatles press officer and the head of Apple and stuff. And when we signed with Warner's, he was now at Warner's, but he was still very close with all of them, in particular George. And one day I was at the Warner's office in London, New Oxford Street, and they're all coming down the doors. And I get kind of swept up by Derek and a few people I didn't recognize. Turn around, we're going to lunch. And we get in a big limo, and I realize it's back then when the seats fold down, you're facing people in the back.
Right.
And Derek goes, Gerry, that's George Harrison. And I thought, oh, far out. And I was 17 years old. And I said to him, I have to tell you, we have a new album, and I used your title because I have a song called I Need You on the first album. And he wrote a lovely Beatles song. You don't realize how much I need you.
Yeah.
And I said, I stole your title. And the first thing he ever said to me, he says, that's all right, Gerry. I got it from someone else. Far out. Life is going to be really bizarre for the next few years.
That's a funny one. And any Johns? Did you ever meet John over the years?
I didn't meet John. Dewey has a couple of John stories, and I was at that party, but I don't think I even met him. I did meet Paul a few times because Paul is very close with Brian Wilson and hung a lot with Brian. And so there was a particular birthday party I remember with Paul in Malibu. Another George Harrison story. We were at, unfortunately, it was at the funeral for Harry Nilsson, and it was obviously a very sad time and stuff, but amazing that people turned out to honor the man. And I'm standing next to George Harrison. This is years later, and I thought I'd better reintroduce myself. It'd been 10 or 50. I didn't want to just imply that he's going to remember. I said, I don't know if you remember me, but he said, I remember you. You used to be in America, right? And I said, I still am. I thought, I guess I don't want to sound like I'm apologizing. Kind of weird.
That's a pretty good one. All right, before we wrap it up, because you've been armed today, I'm pretty impressed. There was two other ones, two other interesting questions I was thinking that you might have stories on. You've been impressive with all your other ones. There's another famous Gerry in rock, spells his name different, and wondered if you ever had any encounters with Jerry Garcia.
No, but Dewey did. Dewey lived in the Bay Area for many years, San Anselmo, and they were scattered all over, but mostly in Marin. And so I remember meeting, who was the bass player?
Phil Lesh.
Phil Lesh. I remember meeting Phil, and Dewey was quite close with Phil. Phil had a restaurant in Sausalito for a while and stuff. And Dewey had been to lots of Dead shows, and I think he knew, I don't want to say he knew Jerry, but he'd met him quite a few times. But no, I hadn't. I was watching, John Mayer is, of course, out with Dead & Co. And in general, basically, he's playing the Garcia parts. But it was interesting to hear, John's a fascinating guy, an incredibly bright guy, but he's certainly the right guy for the job, because he was talking about, just all the genius that is Garcia and what a unique style that is. And it's like, how do you even label it? But John seemed like the right guy. And I thought, well, this is in good hands,
No, he's a very, and that's an interesting choice of him. I mean, because that's a real cross-pollination of generations and stuff. And to have something like that work the way it has is a bit noteworthy. All right, well, final question here. Now, sometimes people, because I've been privileged to see America a few different times. America's had such a strong connection in these islands, that the arena, I've seen you at the Blaisdell Concert Hall. Of course, you've recorded records here, even with Sir George Martin. But when I think about, sometimes people ask me my favorite concerts, and we were just talking about concerts. You mentioned that Dewey had seen the Dead a bunch, and I can usually rank the several, because there are a few, like seeing those, I can always say the absolute number one is when Led Zeppelin reunited in 2007 at the O2. There's nothing that will ever touch seeing that, but I have several others that I could put that I know are in like the top five. So turning my attention to a cat like yourself, who's been privileged to see so much stuff, and by your timeline of life, you've also were able to see stuff I never could have seen, and plus you're privileged because of who you are. So when you assess, if somebody was to come up to you and say, seriously, Gerry, of all the cats you've seen, whether as a little boy, before you had the access and the privilege you've got, and then the special things, could be jams at people's homes, you know, at Bill Graham's living room, whatever it is. If you can think of what is the absolute and what is up in that top five category?
Well, oh God, that's a very, very long list. And I have played with a million people. I often tell this, not often, but there is a true story about that. The song, You Are So Beautiful, just credited to Billy Preston, was written in my apartment in LA, because we were all at the Rainbow, and we went back to my place, and I had a lovely grand piano, and it was Dennis Wilson and myself, Danny Hutton from Three Dog Night, Billy Preston, and Billy Hinchy from Dino, Desi, and Billy. Anyway, and it was an all-nighter, and sat around the piano and just worked on that song and sang it. And years later, I noticed that Dennis was doing it in Beach Boy shows. He was singing it as the encore. And I said, that's so great. And he says, don't you remember? It was written in your place, you know? And I went, that's right. And I thought, an amazing thing about something that's that dense and, you know, that kind of noteworthy that can just slide out of your memory. But it's an indicator of how thick the times were. It was really an amazing thing, the 70s.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's so many things like that, and that you've been privileged to have as part of your own legacy. And as a fan, though, a fan moment, something as a fan that sticks out, not that you played in.
I can tell you that the first album I ever bought was Surfin' Safari. So I was a Beach Boy fan long before I had any idea I was going to be making a living at this. And we ended up performing with the Beach Boys and touring all over the world with them. We were on the 50th anniversary and playing at the Tokyo Dome and stuff. But there were times in the 80s and the 90s when we were out with the Beach Boys, and let's say, for example, Kokomo had been a hit. And they had hired the entire UNLV cheerleader staff as cheerleaders for Beach Whittier School and stuff. They had a plane, and Dewey and I would mooch a ride on the plane. And so we would spend the summer playing our hour of hits, and then getting to sit there. And I would sit with Audrey every night and just watch Carl, who was a dear friend of mine, as you know. And when that tour was over, we were on the plane and we flew back to LA. And I'm kind of combining it into a collective moment. But I remember when we landed, and it was 1 or 2 in the morning, and all the town cars are pulling up, and everybody's getting their cars, end of the tour, and there's hugs and everything. I remember thinking to myself, I don't think it could be any better than that. I'd just been out all summer with my favorite band in the world, actually sharing the stage. Yeah. I would do the encore, and I would sing Rhonda and other stuff. And I was smart enough to at least freeze the moment and say, just hold on to this, because it might never be this good again. And without sounding negative, it never was. That really was a pinnacle. We were playing baseball stadiums, sometimes 2 different states a night. It was unbelievable. And you get to hear a Beach Boys show back then when Dennis was alive and Carl, and just the heyday. And I was fortunate enough to recognize the moment and log it in. So I think I made it. I burned it in my memory a little bit deeper because of that.
I love it. Some great storytelling. Gerry Beckley of America, Aurora. We'll go out with, what's your favorite, the first single? You want me to play that one, Friends Are Hard to Find, or what would you like? What do you want it to end on?
Let's play Way to Go. Let's play the one that
we were talking about with the jam.
Yeah.
That. Nice. Very, very cool. And any ideas when we're going to see you and Dewey back here in the islands, or we're still not?
Yes. I can't give you the dates, but I know that there was some shows earlier this year that unfortunately got COVIDed out, had to be moved. And we've rescheduled them for, let's just say, early next year.
Right on. Well, we'll look forward, fingers crossed, we get to see you in person. And I hope you had fun today. It was great having you back on the show.
Good to talk with you again. All right, man.
Be safe, brother.
See ya.
Aloha.